Okay, peace and blessings, everybody. It's your brother Sorry back with yet another one. Yeah, man. Peace to the true and living. If you tuned into this, you are the true and living. Nice to meet you. Thank you for tuning in. Today is gonna be an interesting piece today. Yeah, I mean, we're gonna go right back into another another volume of Ether Illustrated. It's like it's Sports Illustrated. We're gonna go back in and check this out. Another installment of our series on the ether. This will be number 6. Nearing the end of this, just wanted to kind of go into something interesting. I'm sure y'all see the title of the video, The Fabric of Time. So we're going to go into the idea of time in ether-based physics. Now, this is going to be kind of interesting. It's gonna tie a lot into or sound a lot like what we've been talking about as far as patterns. Now, I must admit, like as far as if you get the book, like let me see, Self to Self. Um, in the book, there's a reference to space time in there. You see what I'm saying? But from the perspective of this the physics that we're going to talk about today, or whatever case may be, it's going to be a difference in that. How typically we look at time like moving forward through time or whatever, um, but the way um, this is viewed from as we're going to see, we're going to deal with it from the perspective of, let's say, everything having zero point, a 0 point meaning a start time or a zero time, and then everything progressing from there or what have you. Everything having a duration or what have you. You see what I'm saying? From its inception to expiration and everything like that. Everything similar to how we were talking about in previous videos about patterns having a tempo to them. You see what I'm saying? So everything having its own particular timing. Now this, astrologically speaking, this is a thing. That's one of the things an astrologer is going to ask you. What time were you born or whatever case may be. So from wherever you're born, June 12th, 1975 or whatever case may be at 9:15 or whatever. And let's say it's 8:48 right now, on July 21st, 2025. Yeah, there's a timing to your life or whatever case may be. You see what I'm saying? Um, yeah, it has a duration and it has a tempo to it or whatever. It's on its own frequency. Similar to how we was kind of talking about how you live inside of your mind, all that stuff like that. It's like your personal bubble, so to speak, or whatever case may be. It has its own tempo, it has its own everything or whatever. Well, everything in your environment has its own tempo, has its own individual 0 point or point of inception and everything like that, or what have you. And as a collective, as far as your environment is concerned, the collective oscillation or the collective frequency of all those independent things oscillating on their own or whatever case may be, the collection of that, the mean of that, um, the vibratory frequency or whatever, the vibration of that, the oscillation of that, according to these ether-based physics, as we're going to get into Tesla and Keely once again, the mean of that, that's our perception of time. That's what equates to our perception of time. Now, if you're familiar with any of these conversations or whatever, I've been saying in the last couple of videos, or at least throughout this series, that um, all of this phenomena that we experience or view or that we're talking about on a scientific quantum physics type of level or whatever case may be, a lot of it has an experiential counterpart. So how we say time or whatever case may be, to a lot of these guys who dealing with these etheric type physics or whatever, time is like a side effect. Time is not its own dimension or whatever case may be. From Einsteinian physics, you're dealing with the perspective. When I say general relativity, quantum mechanics, all that, you're dealing with the idea of space time, a fourth dimension of space and time kind of combined or whatever case may be. When you start getting into Tesla, Keely, and all that stuff like that, They don't collapse space and time together or whatever case may be. Nothing travels through space and time, it travels through the ether. So when you see those models or whatever of, let's say, like a planet or whatever, and it's on its orbit or whatever, and it's bending the so-called curvature in space-time or whatever case may be. This is a I'm just kind of priming the pump before I kind of get into this little piece we're gonna get into today. Um, when it's kind of bending, space-time or whatever case may be, according to a lot of your people who dealt with the ether theory or whatever case may be, or ether physics or whatever, what they're calling space-time is actually the ether. So you never escape the ether concept or whatever in their mind. It's not bending space-time; it's bending, it's distorting the ether or what have you. So it's stuff like that. Um, but in this piece, we're gonna kind of get into, you know, perspectives on time and what time is, and how they view time and stuff like that. Because we have to remember, let's say like Nikola Tesla, he was involved in the Philadelphia experiment, so that's a reason why um, his perspective on time would be interesting. Um, I have another guy that we're going to talk about, Dr. David Lewis Anderson from the Anderson Institute. He claims to have, well, he ain't no claiming, he has patents as far as, yeah, so Dr. David Lewis Anderson, a scientist with degrees in engineering, physics, and philosophy, proposed his time warp field theory in 1987. This theory suggests that rotating objects warp space-time around themselves. Rotating objects warp space-time around themselves. And I wanted to interject with what we just talked about with space-time being the ether from an alternate perspective, but we'll move on in this. Dr. David Lewis Anderson, this theory suggests that rotating objects warp space-time around themselves, an effect known as frame dragging or lens theory effect. Anderson posits that even the slightest twists in space-time contain immense energy potentials that can be harnessed to create fields for moving matter and information forward or backwards in time. His background includes advanced research and development for the United States Air Force and founding of the TTRC, an an advanced time technology research laboratory. Okay, Anderson's and the Anderson Time Reactor. I mean, this is, you can look this up. This ain't me making, this ain't nothing I made up. The Anderson Time Reactor, also referred to as a space-time battery, is a system designed to utilize this high energy potential between two regions of twisted space-time. It couples regions of space-time with different space-time tensions, thereby accessing and creating a conduit to harvest stored energy. Now, that's a reason why I'm not making any attempt to break any of that down, because as we get into this, we're gonna revisit everything that we talking about, how he's proposing that the science of what he's talking about works, and we're gonna filter it through this ether physics that we've been talking about to see kind of what it sounds like and everything like that. Because as we're gonna see, Tesla and Dollard, and we've been contrasting Nikola Tesla, Eric Dollard, um, John Keely, and Dale Pond. All of those are four individuals that, living and dead, they deal with the ether theory and stuff like that. They're actual electrical engineers and everything like that. Many of them have patents or what have you. So we have a solid base to kind of measure etheric physics on, or whatever the case may be. So Dr. David Lewis Anderson is an interesting individual because he talks about, if you get into some of his stuff, he has patents on the time reactor. It's something called a time reactor. He has actually has patents on it. He has, let me see here, Anderson, he goes into actual theories of time travel and stuff like that from his perspective. I mean, he has a few things on YouTube or whatever case may be, where he talks about they use magnetic fields. They put things inside of electromagnetic fields. How he explains it, as far as I can understand. They put things in fields, and they speed up the frequency within the field in order to either preserve that thing or whatever case may be, or um, he basically talks about they're about on the fourth generation of time travel or time manipulation technology. That's what he says. David um, Lewis Anderson. So that's an interesting person to kind of throw in the mix on this conversation about time. So we're gonna kind of get into that. Just I know we've kind of given an introduction to John Keely in previous installments of this. We've given everybody should know who Eric Dollard is. Everybody should know who Nikola Tesla is. Everybody should know who Dale Pond is by now. These are all our ether physicists that we've been kind of rolling with this whole time. We're gonna introduce somebody new into the mix. We're gonna introduce Dr. David Lewis Anderson into the mix, and we're gonna get into some of these ether physics as it pertains to just time in general. All right. All right. The elusive nature of time and unconventional inquiry, right? Time, a seemingly universal constant, has been a subject of profound philosophical and scientific inquiry throughout human history, while mainstream physics, particularly Einstein's theories of relativity define time as intrinsically linked with space in a four-dimensional continuum known as space-time. This understanding is now universally accepted. So Einstein's stuff is universally accepted. That's the mainstream. This understanding is not universally accepted, but that is the mainstream, especially within the realms of unconventional scientific thought. Alternative, alternative and historical perspectives often offer vast different interpretations, challenging the orthodox view of time as a fixed linear progression. So the fixed linear progression model, that's what we get from Einstein's general relativity and quantum mechanics. Okay, this report delves into unique understandings of time proposed by figures who operate outside conventional scientific paradigms. John Keely, upon Nikola Tesla, Eric Dollar, these individuals explore fundamental forces, vibratory phenomena, and the underlying fabric of reality, leading them to conceptualize time in ways that diverge significantly from mainstream consensus. Additionally, the report will examine the time manipulation research attributed to David Lewis Anderson, which presents a more applied and engineering focused approach to altering temporal flow. The objective is to delineate and contrast their unique perspectives on the nature of time, highlighting the foundational concepts central to each comparative analysis. Da, 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 da. Will emphasize similarities, differences, unique contributions. Okay, the persistent human fascination with and challenge to conventional understanding of time, as evidenced by the continued exploration of these alternative theories, suggests an enduring explanation beyond established scientific frameworks. This highlighted a broader trend in the history of science where deeply held, sometimes intuitive concepts such as the ether persist in alternative framework. Okay, yeah, that's this whole series has been about the ether. Okay, and as you can see, just that thing, um, a lot of people might ask, man, why are you fixating on the ether so much? Because it changes how physics looks. It changes how physics sounds. It changes our explanations for half of this stuff. You see what I'm saying? Things that would seem pseudo or fringe or whatever, once it's explained differently in a alternative yet functional version of physics, it changes the game. It makes certain things that were weird seem very much possible. You see what I'm saying? And it unlocks whole other levels of technology and human achievement, all that type of stuff like that. Just that little change. Okay. Let's see here. Mm, okay. So before we continue with that, okay. Just a little side note. So, like we've been talking a lot about um, patterns. Now he's gonna get into temporal patterns, or to be more appropriate, it would be resonant energy patterns. So, patterns, as he would describe it, are resonant energy patterns or frequency patterns and everything like that. So that's similar to basically what an astrologer identifies in a person's chart. You see what I'm saying? The cyclical motions of the planets going through various zones or whatever in some sort of um, conceived interval of time or what have you in each instance or what have you, similar to what astrologer identifies in a person's chart, resonant energy patterns under the guise of planetary bodies or their crossing into particular zones of the zodiac, as well as angles they create. You see what I'm saying? Just as people appear in our lives as patterns, the archetype of the particular person may be experienced as an interaction with a flesh and blood person, but in fact may be a fluctuation of some energetic pattern in the ether. You see what I'm saying? Like how if you got Venus in your first house or something like that, you're gonna you may stand to see some sort of attractive woman or something like that, or get some money or something like that, something like that. That's a fluctuation of an energetic pattern or what have you. The astrologer sees it as Venus in your first house or whatever the case may be, but that's a fluctuation of an energetic pattern. The experiential counterpart of that in my life, in my human experience, would be me seeing a woman or me getting some money type deal. That's kind of what we're talking about here. Um, so let's see here. Uh, an astrologer will see this reflect in cyclical orbits of planets and its numerous fractals, or the trajectory of transits from conjunction through opposition to conjunction. So, from an experiential perspective, we may experience something such as getting a job or meeting someone, but these are, from another perspective, resonant patterns, resonant frequency patterns with their own individual timing that are expressions of some type of pressure, or on the experiential side, viewed as principles or what have you. On this side, as we gonna see as we keep going, they're gonna be viewed as scale as fields of a scalar nature, of a neutral nature, or what have you. Similar to how astrology categorizes the influence of planetary forces, not the literal planet, but the themes that they represent. It's not about that literal rock in the sky. It's more about the energy that it represents or what's behind it or whatever the case may be. And there are other explanations for that. Like I said before, Eric Dollard has a conversation in regards to the sun being a transformer, transforming the energy, stepping down the energy from counter space into this side where we can use it, and the various planets being harmonic filters and kind of like conducting a particular frequency of the energy of the sun. And astrologically, that sounds about right, because you got the sun, and everything comes out of the sun. All the other energies of the other planets come out of the sun. So that's an interesting little piece to add. Let me see here. According to proponents of the ether based physics, time is more of a side effect than a standalone dimension. It is the result of tempo of the individual pieces of the environment, each having their own temporal point of origin or zero time in duration. A combination of a multitude of these makes the environment. Our experience of time is a side effect from the combined vibratory frequency of the environment, which is a interesting parallel to an astrological chart and its many overlapping transits. So just kind of just throwing that in there or whatever, just correlating that, um, because that's kind of that because this format in which we're gonna discuss time, it's leaning more in that direction. Everything has its own time. As far as Keely and as far as Tesla is concerned, all that, everything has its own timing or whatever the case may be. And the combination of all that makes our general experience of time. You see what I'm saying? If that makes any sense. So the first person that we're gonna kind of like um, I don't know, view their perspective uh, on time. We're gonna go into John Keely. Let me see here. Mm. Okay, so Keely claimed to liberate an interatomic ether from water and air through vibrations, asserting that this ether possessed boundless energy. He described this ether as vibrating around molecules and assimilating with atoms, aggregation via vibratory negative force, which caused adherence by vibratory rotation. Furthermore, Keely believed in three fundamental forces within what he termed consciousness units, or spherical ether energy: a contracting force akin to gravity, the tractor; an outward pressing force akin to anti-gravity or levity, the pressor; and a stabilizing force, the dominant. Basically, it's positive, negative, and neutral, basically. Um, that balance the other two. These forces arrive from the behaviors of vibration, can be visualized as the constant inflation and deflation of a spherical balloon where gravity is a push and pull effect. Okay, let's 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 kind of let's go ahead and fast forward because I know I've been John Keely and y'all to death on the last few videos, so y'all familiar with sympathetic vibration. Um, while the provided documents do not explicitly detail Keely's direct philosophical views on time within his vibratory theories, his sympathetic vibratory physics framework implicitly positions time as a dynamic manifestation or consequence of ceaseless vibratory states and etheric processes. It's a side effect. If reality is fundamentally vibratory and etheric, then time as experienced would be an emergent property of these constant motions and cycles. The perpetual vibratory motion of atomos, that's what he called the smaller particles or whatever case may be that he described, and the duration coexist uh, co coexistive with space and matter suggests that time is not a separate container but inherent in these dynamic processes. Kind of like how what we saying. The cause is fundamental vibration in etheric dynamics. The effect is the experience of time. The cause is fundamental vibration in etheric dynamics. The effect is our experience of time. So as you can see, even he's saying it in a roundabout way. This certain things have an experiential counterpart. We experience them um, a certain kind of way, but on paper, this is what's happening. Okay, this challenge is the linear, independent view of time in classical physics and the space-time continuum of relativity that we talked about in the introduction, proposing a more fluid processing process oriented understanding where time is inextricably linked to the energetic state of the universe, right? This also implies that manipulating vibrations could in principle influence temporal phenomena. Let's say that again. This also implies that manipulating vibrations could influence temporal phenomena. So, we did a whole nother video about CERN. So basically, not only can disturbances in the ether based off of what they're doing. A 27 kilometer um, ring atom smasher or whatever case may be. Yes, that can, based off what we read in the last piece that we did, that can affect the weather. That can affect um, I don't know, our perception of reality. And apparently, according to Keely, that can affect time. So everything has an experiential counterpart. Our perception of time is described by Keely as a side effect of the rate of vibration of all the surrounding fields, would suggest explanations for things like the Philadelphia experiment, like how we talked about Tesla was involved in the Philadelphia experiment. Would suggest explanations for things like the Philadelphia experiment, the USS Eldridge being bombarded with high levels of energy, bringing it forward through time, might correspond with the idea of making something have a different or higher vibration than the current environment, time, and maybe forcing it to sync with the new environment closest to that frequency or time. Let's say that again. Okay, this might correspond with the idea of making something have a different or higher frequency than the current environment. So if I'm sitting here and I'm bombarded with all kind of energy, hypothetically or whatever, and my perception of time is a combination of all the stuff in my environment. So if I'm of a higher vibration in my particular environment, hypothetically, I would resonate. Remember, we talked about resonance on numerous videos. I would resonate or be like whatever, I would go where I'm like it. I would resonate with an environment that's like what the frequency I'm dealing with is basically what the premise behind their whole experiment, based on what we talking about, what time is, how time works, and everything like that. This would be obviously the premise behind the experiment. But the reason why, if you watch the movie The Philadelphia Experiment, or if you read about it, if you, I have it linked in the description on a couple of videos. Al Bielek talks about it. Um, he was involved in the Philadelphia Experiment and everything like that. Um, people, when the ship came back or whatever, people were like molded to the hull of the ship and in the walls and all kind of stuff because of what we talked about, the nature of time. Because everybody has a 0 point, everybody has a zero time reference or whatever case may be. Everybody has a specific timing. And my astrologers, you would definitely know what I'm talking about because that's why you ask a person, oh, what time was he born? Oh, I gotta rectify your time. Damn, I don't know your birth time. I gotta rectify your time or whatever. We'll just make your birth time at 12 o'clock so we can kind of get around about. You see what I'm saying? That's why they do that because that your zero reference is a thing. Um, and as far as your Philadelphia experiment or whatever case may be, that's why you have all those crazy accidents in the Philadelphia experiment because in their calculation of the energy, they didn't consider that. Apparently, according to Keely. So, uh, yeah, viewing time in this way makes it make more sense than just to assume that we're just going forward in time by default or whatever the case may be. So, moving right along. But let's read that last little thing for Keely. We just, talked about that. Um, Let me see here. This also implies that manipulating vibrations could, in principle, influence temporal phenomena. So even the thing that they doing in CERN could potentially manipulate time. I know it sounds crazy in Star Trek, but we are in the year 2025, and honestly, um, you know, them, as much as people love to say them, militaries across the planet are probably at least 100 years, being very conservative, at least 100 years advanced in the public as far as technology. If I'm talking about it and all this stuff is in the public domain, imagine what a couple billion in the economy of a small country can probably do. I don't know. You see what I'm saying? Okay, so let's go to Dale Pond. Let's go into Dale Pond and see what he's talking about. Okay, so in his work, Roots of the Vibratory Etheric Tree, Dale Pond directly addresses pure waves of space-time, which he describes as scalar waves, right? You see what I'm saying? So again, we may be talking about one thing, but it may have 20 different definitions. It's always good to take note on what each person calls this thing or whatever case may be, so we can gradually accumulate these terms or whatever case may be, because it's like learning a whole nother language. In his work, Roots of the Vibratory Etheric Tree, Del Pond directly addresses pure waves of space-time, which he describes as scalar waves and oscillating curvatures of space-time itself. See, this is what he calls it, but Tesla would call these scalar waves probably as well. These waves are characterized as pure waves of compression and rarefaction of the massless charge of space-time and are specifically identified as longitudinal waves rather than transverse waves, making them non-Hertzian waves. Remember when we had the circular space, matter, and time and everything like that? Oh, okay. Yeah. I didn't want to spill my drink. I know it's like you sat down extra careful just then. Yeah, I didn't want to spill my drink. Um, but anyway, Um, this is your space, matter, and time circle right here. This is what we were saying was the electromagnetic spectrum. This is outside of the electromagnetic spectrum. The electromagnetic spectrum is what he's calling what contains Hertzian waves or transverse waves or whatever case may be. Your outside of the electromagnetic spectrum or whatever case may be is the rest of the ether, what's considered dark matter, dark energy, subspace, hyperspace, dielectric realm, dark matter, dark energy, scalar potentials are out there, longitudinal waves, where we got faster than light travel. All that stuff exists here. So most of the energy sources and stuff that Tesla was talking about exist out there. All right. So moving right along. Okay, he notes that rhythmically varying individual summation vectors in the substructure can produce these scalar waves. He's talking about kind of how scalar waves are produced, while some documents indicate a lack of explicit detail upon specific interpretation of time of these waves, his work implies that time is deeply intertwined with the fundamental vibratory nature of the universe. The concept of pure waves of space-time suggests a more direct, when they say space-time, in translating into, let's say, like an ether person or whatever the case may be, they're talking about the ether. To a Einstein minded person, he's talking about the curvatures in space time and all that stuff like that. Like when we get into David Anderson stuff, he's gonna reference space time. To Tesla and these ether guys, space time is just the ether. You're just talking about you think you're talking about space time, you're talking about ether, according to them. So we bouncing back and forth from different perspectives. Okay, so while some documents indicate a lack of explicit detail upon specific interpretation of time or these waves, his work implies that time is deeply intertwined with the fundamental vibratory nature of the universe. Concept of pure waves of space-time suggests a more direct, even manipulable connection between vibration and the fabric of space-time than Keely explicitly articulated. This can be understood as an attempt to bridge Keely's vibratory ether concept with a more modern understanding of space-time, implying that the fundamental vibrations of ether are dynamic, uh, are the are the dynamic fabric of space-time. Mm. The implying that the fundamental vibrations of the ether are the dynamic fabric of space-time. So basically, again, we come into this situation where they're substituting something that these guys meaning Tesla and Keely, the ether was all that for them. The space time, what they call in, what they use in the Higgs boson for all this. It was just the ether. They didn't need all that. They kind of had a couple of other things or whatever, little nuanced areas, whatever. But the ether served quite a few functions. If you look it up, they're gonna say it was a particle. It was its primary function was to carry light. But as you can see, it served a few other functions and everything like that. And you see all for this one thing, for lack of this one thing, you see all the other things that they got to come up with on the other side of things. So it's just kind of interesting. Um, let's see, this would position time as an inherent property of these oscillating curvatures. Wait, okay, so we just said implying that the fundamental vibrations of the ether are the dynamic fabric of space-time. So basically, the ether and space-time are the same are the same thing. This would position time as an inherent property of these oscillating curvatures, rather than a separate extension external dimension. No fourth dimension, in other words, suggesting a potential mechanism for influencing time through specific vibratory frequencies. Okay, so a potential mechanism for influencing time through specific vibratory frequencies. So that's the second time we heard that. So Keely and Pond uh, both concurred that time can be manipulated by vibratory frequency. This is the second time we've heard that. As we get into Tesla, some of the experiments, as far as the Philadelphia experiment or whatever the case may be, that's as the experiment has been described and how it appears on the movie and how Al Bielek describes it and everything like that. That's basically what they did to get the results that they got. Okay, so let's see here. Time within dynamic cosmic ether. Okay, so this is we're not gonna read all the backstory on uh, Tesla and all that stuff like that because I think we familiar with Tesla as an individual. But this is an interesting piece. Nikola Tesla's understanding of reality and by extension time was profoundly shaped by his concept of a universal ether, influenced by Vedic philosophy after meeting Swami Vivekananda in 1893. Tesla believed that all perceptible matter originates from a primary substance of a tenuity beyond conception, filling all space, the Akasha or luminiferous ether. So he was influenced by Swami Vivekananda. So that was one of the things that influenced. I've heard other things that influenced his perspective, but meeting Swami Vivekananda in 1893, um, that influenced his perspective. It injected a lot of Vedic metaphysics into his understanding, and he kind of, he was kind of working off that premise or whatever. Now, honestly, or whatever, um, a lot of us who are more comedic oriented or more, um, I don't know if you gravitate toward, let's say, more Eastern esotericism, then Tesla's physics would be more compatible with what you probably used to dealing with. You see what I'm saying? As we're seeing in this whole series. Okay, so let's see here. Let's see. While the provided documents explicitly, we're going to just fast forward real quick. While the provided documents explicitly state a lack of direct information on Tesla's explicit understanding of time, his cosmology strongly implies a cyclical and emergent nature of time. The description of matter and phenomena arising and dissolving in never-ending cycles from the interaction of Akasha, ether, and prana creative force is fundamental to his cosmology. Therefore, time is, in Tesla's view, is not a linear progression, or an independent dimension in the modern relativistic sense. So the fourth dimension don't exist in him. Okay, and it's not a linear progression like how we just by default many of us perceive time. Let me see here uh, but rather an emergent property or measure of these continuous repetitive cosmic cycles of creation and dissolution. It is a philosophical and metaphysical understanding of time, where duration, like how we talked about a little bit earlier, is intrinsically tied to the eternal dance of the ether and its creative forces. Zero time to the duration, the timing of a thing. Okay, this perspective challenges the Western linear conception of time yet again, um, aligning more with Eastern philosophical traditions. What I just said, it suggests that temporal phenomena are not merely about progression, but also about recurrence and transformation, potentially offering a framework for understanding phenomena beyond simple cause and effect in linear sequence. So he says is deeper than simple cause and effect or whatever. It's funny. I'm always referencing astrology. Astrology. This definitely sounds a lot like how that understanding is propagated or whatever. So furthermore, Tesla's ether, described as a fluid-like primary substance that is in motion and under strain, suggests a proto-field theory understanding modern physics, while rejecting the luminiferous ether, has developed concepts like the quantum vacuum, Higgs field, and space-time foam, which treat empty space as structured, dynamic, and energetic. You see, all that stuff they got to come up with just to substitute it for the substitute the ether. This suggests that Tesla's intuitive understanding of a dynamic operating medium, though expressed in 19th century terms, prefigured aspects of modern field theories where space-time itself is an active participant in physical phenomena. Now the ether, that's how these guys with all the patents, that's how all their inventions work or whatever. That's the theory that they use to make all their stuff work or whatever. So they couldn't come up with really no better theory. They just they're basically biting off a lot of these guys' theories, coming up with variations of their understandings or whatever, naming it something different or whatever. As you can see, as we've been going through this, okay, if modern concepts of dynamic vacuum are seen as echoes of Tesla's ether, then time, in this broader context, would be a property of this dynamic, energetic fabric rather than a mere backdrop. Okay, let's see. All right, I'm gonna go into what it has about Eric Dollard. Dollard's relativity of electrical engineering explains the reversal of time as a reversal of current resulting from electrical or magnetic reactance. He posits that current reversal is equivalent to time reversal and that the reversal of time is the accumulation of many cycles of oscillation of the reversal of current. This phenomenon, he argues, is not obvious to the observer but affects the frame of reference of electricity. The, the manipulation of time is an indirect consequences of manipulating electrical and magnetic reactance factors such as frequency, capacitance, and inductance under restricted input. This constitutes a highly practical engineer focused interpretation of time, treating it as a variable that responds to specific electrical conditions. So we've been hearing this. That's about the third time we've heard that. that time can be manipulated with frequency. He says reactance factors such as frequency, capacitance, and inductance. Okay, so the implication is that time's perceived flow or direction is deeply coupled to the energetic dynamics of the ether, particularly in electrical circuits. Let me see here. Let's see. He challenges the law of conservation of energy, suggesting that negative watts is a surefire indication of the generation of power, and that over unity, more energy out than in is possible through reactance. He argues that the conventional understanding of energy conservation is a mere belief that leads to overfeeding circuits and repressing a possibility of negative impedance. Um, the assertion that uh, current reversal is equivalent to time reversal, and his arguments for over unity directly challenge a cornerstone of modern physics. So honestly, just even reflecting on the what he's talking about over unity, getting more out than you're putting in. The first thing I thought about, because Kung Fu uses the same kind of physics that he's talking about, or whatever the case may be. Um, the first thing I thought about over unity and getting more out than what you're putting in, and negative impedance. And just the way he kind of describes that when you look it up or whatever, that sounds like the 1 inch punch. Getting more out than what you put in, because if for the for people who understand the mechanics of how that works or whatever, that's literally pretty much what you're doing. Kind of getting more out than what you put in, and kind of how he describes that. That's interesting. Okay, so let's get into some of this. Let's see, David Lewis Anderson. Okay, y'all bear with me. Okay, so let's get into some of this David Lewis Anderson. Okay, and then we're gonna get into his stuff. If y'all can bear with me on this, we're gonna get into some of his stuff, and then we're gonna explain his stuff, or not even explain it, but just translate it um, into Tesla, or into ether physics, or more etheric variant of physics, so we can kind of see what that would mean, what that would entail. Okay, so Dr. David Lewis Anderson, through the Anderson Institute, proposed a more conventional, albeit advanced, physical approach to time manipulation. His research is rooted in the principles of general relativity, particularly that the concept of inertial frame dragging, and aims to achieve observable terminal shifts. Now, what he talks about, I think, in his research, he suggests that enhanced acceleration and enhanced gravity can cause temporal distortions. That's one of the things that he says. Now, when you go into his theories and stuff, he should be in straight up general relativity. Now, we've kind of been exposed to enough of this etheric physics to kind of be able to translate a little bit, but he's straight relativity. So we're gonna translate it in full in a second. So um let's see. Okay, so his one of his theories is time warp field theory, right? Time warp field theory. I'm sure you can Google this, so y'all know I ain't just making this like brother. So I just making up stuff. Nah, this is a real thing. You know what I'm saying? They didn't. I know they didn't send me a memo that somebody was playing around with time travel, but apparently, you feel me? Oh, okay, so time warp field theory. Anderson's theory is based on the idea that highly energetic rotating systems can generate time warp fields by inducing inertial frame dragging. Inertial frame dragging, okay? Um, in general relativity, frame dragging refers to the dragging of space-time. So in Tesla's view, it's the dragging of the ether. It would be the dragging of the ether. Dragging of space-time itself by rotating masses. Okay, Anderson's work extends this to propose that sufficiently powerful rotating electromagnetic fields or energetic plasmas could create conditions where space-time is significantly warped, leading to observable time dilations, time acceleration, or deceleration, and even time reversal. Okay, so that's kind of what we were talking about prior, that increased acceleration or increased gravity. What he's talking about increased, possibly increased mass or increased gravity or whatever case may be, um, causing these time dilations. Okay, Anderson's time reactor. Okay, this ain't something I made up. You can Google this yourself. Anderson time reactor. The Anderson time reactor is a conceptual or experimental. Well, I don't. This is what it's giving me. Um, Device designed to create such time warp fields. I, I've this isn't my first time looking up David Lewis Anderson, but this is what the AI gives me. This is what the AI comes with when as it's mentioning Anderson's time reactor. That's what it's coming up with. Okay, it involves a rapid acceleration and rotation of a highly energetic plasma or other exotic materials to induce extreme inertial frame dragging. Um, the theory suggests that within the warped field generation generated by ATR Anderson Time Reactor, the time would pass at a different rate for object inside the field compared to external observers. Okay, that's what I was talking about a little bit earlier in the same video or whatever. What he's talking about they in the fourth generation of this type stuff. He's talking about basically they create a field like what we just talked about, um, and time passes differently for the individual in the field than it does on the outside. This is him. This is somebody with a this has a patent on it. I didn't make this up. Okay. Mechanism of manipulation. Anderson's approach attributes time manipulation to the direct warping of the fabric of space-time itself, consistent with the mathematical framework of general relativity. So he's staunch general relativity person. Um, by creating intense gravitational or gravitational like fields, intense gravity or acceleration, according to his model, can distort time. So via inertial frame dragging, the very flow of time is altered as time is seen as the fourth dimension of space-time. His research seeks to engineer devices, like all the movies that you've seen. Okay, his research seeks to engineer devices that can physically manipulate this dimension. Huh? Huh? Let's read that again. His research seeks to engineer devices that can physically manipulate this dimension. So if this is in the public domain and I'm reading it, and I'm nobody special, I'm a regular person just like you. Um, if I got access to this, that mean they've been doing this for decades and decades. And if you get into his information or whatever case may be, he gonna tell you that they on like their fourth generation of this type technology. Like I said before in numerous other videos or whatever, man, conservatively they 100 years ahead of time. But I'm just being conservative about it. God knows. So contrasting the perspectives, okay, let's see, we starting to kind of get into the translation, and then we're gonna get into the ultimate punchline of this whole thing. Okay, so the perspective on time from SVP, Tesla, Dollard, and Anderson's research offer fascinating contrast. Fundamental nature of time. So to Keely and Pond, time is an emergent property or a manifestation of fundamental eternal vibratory processes. It's a side effect within the ether. It's not a separate dimension, but inherent in the cosmic rhythm. Everything has its own rhythm, a collection of multiple things that resonate with each other and stuff like that create their own frequency, and thus that's our experience in time, according to Pond and Keely. So Tesla and Dollar, time is a dimension but fundamentally linked to the ether and electrical phenomenon. You see what I'm saying? Not necessarily the malleable unified fabric of space-time as in relativity. Dollard explicitly rejects times dependent on light speed and sees it as distinct from space. Okay, Tesla implies it's part of an eternal cycle of ether. Okay, so to Anderson, time is the fourth. So you see how he's the only person talking different. Time it because it and it's not him. I mean, he got patents. I mean, however this plays out or whatever case may be, it's no shot at him, but he's speaking general relativity. That's what I mean. His physics sound different. So Anderson, time is the fourth dimension of space time, physical entity that can be warped and manipulated directly through extreme gravitational or inertial effects as described by general relativity. So the common thread I'm seeing is um, bombarding the ether or space time, however they say it. See, that's why this stuff sounds so tricky and pseudo when it comes when you try to explain it in general relativity, because there's so many twists and turns in general relativity because they're trying to avoid the ether and all this stuff that comes with it. So let me see here. So let's see here. Explanation of Anderson's physics from other views from SVP. Okay, so here we go. Um, from okay, yeah. So they're gonna explain what they feel like what he's actually doing. Okay, so to Keely and Pond, manipulation of time is not explicitly discussed as a direct engineering goal. If it were possible, it would involve harmonizing or disrupting fundamental vibratory patterns within the ether, potentially influencing the perceived flow of events by altering the underlying energetic rhythms. Kind of sound like CERN, don't it? Um, but hold on one sec. Okay, so let me see here. Bear with me, bear with me. Okay, yeah, time manipulation. Let's go back to that. Altering the underlying energetic rhythm. Okay, if it were possible, it would likely involve harmonizing or disrupting fundamental vibratory patterns within the ether, potentially influencing the perceived flow of events by altering the underlying energetic rhythms. This would be less about bending a dimension, like as in space time, the fourth dimension of time of reality, however it may go, and more about shifting states of consciousness or vibrational reality. So he's basically saying that um, in the process of doing this, those are some of the things that could be affected in regards to this. Okay, so let's go into Tesla's and Dollard's view um, on if we were to try to manipulate time, how would that even be possible? Okay, so Tesla and Dollard explicitly states that time itself cannot be accessed or manipulated directly. So he's in direct contrast to Anderson. Um, he's in direct contrast to relativity more so than Anderson as a person. Um, but yeah, let's see. Dollard explicitly states that time itself cannot be accessed or manipulated directly. Instead, its apparent manipulation is an indirect consequence of controlling electrical and magnetic reactance. It's always going back to creating disturbances in the ether. It's always going back to that, particularly through current reversal. Okay, this suggests that by engineering specific electrical conditions, one could induce phenomena that appear to involve time reversal or change in time's progression. It's about manipulating the electrical environment that time is tied to rather than time itself as an independent variable. So, this is yet another scientist who deals with the ether as a concept, talking about time. But he's talking about time is more so tied to the environment than it's tied to it's just a standalone thing it on its own. Okay, so Anderson, time manipulation is achieved by physically warping space-time through generated gravitational light fields, inertial frame dragging, using high energetic rotating systems. This is a direct physical alteration of temporal dimension itself. Okay, so to these rest of these guys, there is no temporal dimension. It's a side effect. So let's get to the punchline of this whole video. Y'all been rocking with me close to an hour right now. So let's go ahead and cap this off with the punchlines of them. Hit you with the 1-2. Hit you with what sympathetic vibratory physics has to say about this. Then we're gonna go into Tesla and Dollard, their etheric physics, or roundabout what their framework on physics would suggest. Okay, so from SVP, Keely and Dollard's view, Keely and Pond might interpret Anderson's work as attempting to induce extreme imbalances or harmonies within the etheric field through his rotating systems and energetic plasmas. They might suggest that the inertial frame dragging is merely a macroscopic observation of underlying high frequency etheric vibrations, because everything is fractals, nature self similar across scale, as we talked about. Um, let me see here. Let's see here. Let me go back. An inertial frame dragon is merely a macroscopic observation of underlying um, high frequency etheric vibrations being forced into unnatural, sympathetic, or discordant relationships. Okay, so so basically he's taking etheric vibrations that would normally be on a micro scale, and basically he's adding more gravity, like how he's talking about these gravitation, increased gravity distorts time, so he's adding more gravity to it. um let's see here. uh He's adding more gravity to it. He's forcing it into some sort of unnatural or discordant relationships. It's always going back to disturbing the ether. It's always going back to some sort of perturbation or disturbance within the ether, whether it's a big one or a small one. They in various different frequencies or whatever, but it's always some manner of disturbance in the ether, as you can see with this. Okay, so the perceived time warping would then be a consequence of altering the fundamental vibratory rates that constitute reality. Altering the fundamental vibratory rates that constitute reality in that localized region, like the field he's talking about, rather than a direct bending of a separate dimension. So according to them, there is no bending of space time that's going on. If time is emergent from vibration, then changing the vibration is changing the local time signature. Huh. Time is emergent from vibration. It's a side effect of things vibrating. So our perception of time, basically, according to all of these guys, except for Anderson because he's dealing with general relativity, but all of my ether physicists, um, time is a side effect of vibration. So that's basically what we get with this. Um, Changing the vibration is changing the local time signature. Interesting. Okay, so from Tesla, Tesla and Dollar's view, Tesla and Dollar would likely acknowledge Anderson's use of highly energetic rotating systems, but strongly reject the notion of space-time warping as the fundamental mechanism. So ain't nobody, their perception of space-time, to them, if you talking about you warping the space-time, you just warping the ether or whatever the case may be. And you talking about increased gravity, so you talking about on a macrocosmic scale or whatever that you're warping that you're warping the ether at. So basically, how they describing it. Okay, so Tesla might suggest that Anderson's devices are creating localized, powerful disturbances or resonances within the luminiferous ether, causing a shift in the energetic cycles or etheric density within that region. So it's causing a shift in the energetic cycles or etheric density within that region. This shift, rather than space-time curvature, this shift rather than space-time curvature, because Anderson says that he's creating a curvature in space-time, so causing a shift in the energetic cycle or etheric density within that region. This shift rather than space-time curvature would then lead to the observed temporal effects. The ether, not space-time, would be the medium being acted upon, like how we've been talking about. So according to how Tesla's framework, filtering this through Tesla's framework, it would be the ether, not the space time. So Eric Dollard would be particularly critical of the relativistic framework. He would likely argue that Anderson's time manipulation, if successful, is not due to space time warping, but rather to direct manipulation of electrical and magnetic reactants within the highly energetic plasma or rotating system. Mm, mm. So the rotating system makes these worlds and stuff like that or whatever, in space time or whatever. He's saying the direct manipulation of electrical and magnetic reactors within the highly energetic plasma or rotating system. Dollar would assert that the extreme currents and fields generated are implicitly causing current reversals or rapid changes in electrical and magnetic states, which are the true causes of any perceived time acceleration. So he's saying that the extreme currents and fields generated are implicitly causing current reversals or rapid. The same thing he's talking about when he says reverse electricity and all that. Or it, excuse me, electrical current changing or reversing, going backwards. Um, current reversals or rapid changes in electrical and magnetic states, which are the true causes of any perceived time acceleration or reversal. He would likely see Anderson's time warp as a misinterpretation of a purely electrical phenomena. So he ain't believing in the space time. He ain't believing in none of that. He's saying that's some electrical phenomena that you're dealing with. Perhaps a manifestation of his counter space and reverse time concepts where the electrical conditions are creating a local time reversed or time accelerated environment. The field. He's creating an environment where he can reverse time or accelerate time or whatever, like he said in his patents. Um, he would emphasize that it's manipulation of the electrical environment that gives the appearance of time manipulation. So we keep hearing that over and over again, the manipulation of the electrical environment, as time is intrinsically linked to the electrical phenomena, not a rubber sheet to be bent. So basically, he's saying time is a side effect of everything vibrating. Time is linked to manipulation of time would be linked to the electrical phenomena, or you would basically have to disturb um, the vibration, the frequency, the electrical phenomena in the local area in order to manipulate time. So that's an interesting piece. Okay, so in conclusion, while Dr. David Lewis Anderson seeks to engineer the time manipulation through a general relativistic framework of space-time warping, the perspectives of sympathetic vibratory physics of Keely and Pond and Tesla and Dollar offer alternative ether-centric explanations. For sympathetic vibratory physics, time manipulation would be about altering fundamental vibratory rhythms, while for Tesla and especially Dollard, it would be a consequence of manipulating the electrical and magnetic properties of the ether, um, positive, negative, neutral, demonstrating that the underlying model of reality profoundly shapes how one approaches and interprets the very fabric of time. So, yeah, that's pretty much what we had on that one. I think that that's a very interesting piece because like I said, even if you get True Master Volume One, I'm talking about a fourth dimension of space time order. I'm talking about stuff repeating and everything like that. We still have our notion of patterns, so that's I guess a glimpse at kind of their version of time or whatever case may be, or that's kind of the version of time they're kind of working with or whatever case may be. But it's a contrast to the traditional fourth dimensional space-time view or whatever case may be. In their view, um, time is a side effect, and you have to affect the environment in order to affect our perception of time. So that ties into the like I said, the description of how the Philadelphia experiment was done. The As we can see, is actually quite interesting. Um, a lot of these experiments and things that these people come up with, and they'll give us a relativistic explanation for it, but it's interesting how simplified and how precise the explanation for it gets when we take it through etheric based physics or whatever. It's like the explanation is a little bit more straightforward and down to earth, and in all these examples or whatever case may be, um, all these little experiments they're doing, particularly CERN or whatever, um, a lot of the stuff that people have been complaining about, as you can see, all this stuff that we talking about in these little pieces that we doing or whatever. Yeah, these are same things that people complaining about as a result of the Large Hadron Collider, different things like that or whatever case may be. So it's interesting piece. That's all I have for today. I appreciate y'all for tuning in, rocking with me for over an hour today. Peace and blessings, man. Have a good one. Peace.